Stop. Before you wash your hands one more time, you need to hear this. Because what I am about to share with you is something that has been passed down through generations of rabbinical scholars, hidden inside the mystical texts of Kabbalah, and practiced quietly by the wealthiest Jewish families across every continent for over 2,000 years. And it has everything to do with the way water flows over your fingers. There is a ritual, an ancient, sacred ritual. And most people in the modern world are doing it completely, catastrophically wrong. Not just wrong in a spiritual sense, wrong in a way that, according to the Kabbalists, literally repels abundance. Wrong in a way that sends a signal, not just to the universe but to your own nervous system, your own subconscious mind, that you are not ready to receive wealth, that you are not aligned with the flow of blessing, that you are, in the most precise mystical language, washing your prosperity right down the drain. I know that sounds intense. I know it might sound hard to believe. But by the end of what I'm about to share with you, you will understand exactly why the ancient sages encoded this wisdom into a daily ritual, why it has survived intact through millennia of exile and hardship, and why the moment you begin to do this correctly, something will shift. Not someday, not eventually, right away. Because the body responds to intentional ritual the same way it has always responded, immediately, powerfully, and on a level that goes far deeper than the rational mind. So stay with me. This is going to take a little time, because the wisdom I am unpacking today isn't a quick tip or a trendy hack. It is a complete system, a complete understanding of how water, wealth, intention, and spiritual law interweave in a way that the ancient Jewish mystics understood with breathtaking precision. And I promise you, every minute you spend here will give you something you can use tonight, something you can practice tomorrow morning when you wake up, walk to the sink, and hold your hands under the water with entirely new eyes. Before we go any deeper, I want to invite you to do something right now. Go to the first pinned comment below this video. There is a link there to something I have put together specifically for people who want to understand the full architecture of Jewish wealth wisdom. It is called 15 Jewish Wealth Codes, Enrichment Strategies of the Jewish People, and it goes far beyond what we can cover today. It is not a theory. It is not philosophy for philosophy's sake. It is a practical, deeply researched guide to the specific mindsets, behaviors, rituals, and beliefs that have fueled Jewish prosperity for generations. If what I share in this video resonates with you, and I believe it will, that ebook will change the way you think about money forever. The link is pinned right now in the first comment. Go check it out whenever you are ready. But first, let's go into the wisdom together. Let me start at the very beginning. Not the beginning of hand washing as a hygiene practice. We all understand that. I want to take you back to the beginning of hand washing as a spiritual technology, because the Jewish concept of Netilat Yadayim, the ritual washing of hands, is one of the most ancient, most precisely codified, and most misunderstood practices in all of Jewish law and mysticism. The word netilat comes from the Hebrew root meaning to lift or to elevate. Not merely to clean, to elevate. When you lift water over your hands in the traditional ritual manner, you are not just removing dirt. You are engaging in an act of spiritual elevation. You are signaling to the deepest forces of your being, and to the universe itself, that you are lifting yourself to a higher state. That you are transitioning from one level of consciousness to another. That your hands, which are the primary instruments through which human beings create, build, earn, and receive, are now consecrated, ready, open. The Zohar, the foundational text of Kabbalah, describes the hands as direct extensions of the soul's creative capacity. The right hand is associated with chesed, loving kindness, generosity, the expansive flow of divine blessing. The left hand is associated with gevurah, strength, discipline, boundaries, the focused power of intention. When you wash your hands with full awareness of this teaching, you are not just cleaning them. You are aligning them. You are calibrating the two primary forces of giving and receiving, of expansion and discipline, so that everything you touch afterward carries the signature of that alignment. Think about what that means for your work, for your business, for every handshake, Every document you sign, every project you build. If your hands are spiritually calibrated before you begin, according to the Kabbalists, everything flows from that alignment. Now, the Talmud is remarkably specific about how this washing is to be done, and this specificity is not accidental. The ancient rabbis understood something that modern neuroscience is only beginning to validate: that ritual specificity, precise, repeated, intentional action, creates neural pathways of certainty and focus. When you engage in a practice with exact form and full presence, you are training your nervous system to associate that action with a particular state of being. Athletes understand this. Musicians understand this. And the ancient Jewish sages understood this thousands of years before the language of neuroscience existed. They encoded the psychology of peak performance directly into sacred ritual. The washing of hands was one of the most powerful of these encodings. Let me tell you about a family I heard of through a rabbi I had the privilege of studying with. A family in Brooklyn, deeply traditional, deeply prosperous, and deeply intentional about their ritual life. The patriarch of the family, an elderly man who had built a thriving business from almost nothing after immigrating to the United States with very little, was once asked by his grandchildren what the secret to his success was. He thought for a long moment, and then he said something that stayed with everyone who heard it. He said, "Every morning before I do anything else, before I look at my phone, before I check the news, before I think about money or worry about problems, I go to the sink, and I wash my hands, and I remember what my hands are for. I remember that they are not just my hands, they are instruments of the divine. And when I remember that, nothing is impossible." His grandchildren thought it was a beautiful but simple idea, but the more they studied, the more they understood. It wasn't simple at all. It was the most sophisticated wealth technology imaginable, compressed into 2 minutes at the kitchen sink every morning. This is what I want you to understand as we go through everything I'm about to share. The practices that look the simplest on the surface, the ones that seem almost too humble to be significant, are often the ones that carry the most transformative power, because they are practiced daily. And daily practice is the compound interest of the spiritual world. Small, precise, intentional actions, repeated with full awareness over time, accumulate into a completely different life. The Jewish wisdom tradition understood this not as a motivational slogan, but as a precise description of how reality works. So let's talk about what hand washing in the Jewish mystical tradition is actually activating. Let's go layer by layer, from the physical to the metaphysical, so that by the time we get to the part that most people are getting devastatingly wrong, you will understand exactly why it matters so much. The first layer is the most basic: cleanliness as sacred preparation. In Jewish law, hands are considered spiritually susceptible to what is called tumah, a kind of spiritual impurity that accumulates through contact with the world. Now, before you get lost in complex halakhic definitions, let me give you the essence of what this means in practical terms. Throughout the night while you sleep, your consciousness partially withdraws from the physical body. You are, in a very real sense, in a different state of being. And when you wake, there is a transition that must be honored. Your hands, which touched your own body, your face, your eyes, your mouth while you were in that semi-detached state, carry the energetic residue of that liminal space. The tradition is clear. Before you do anything else, before you pray, before you eat, before you speak words of Torah, before you engage with the sacred business of the day, you wash. You make the transition deliberate. You mark the crossing from the unconscious, receptive state of sleep to the active, creative, purposeful state of wakefulness. Think about the power of that as a daily practice. Most people in the modern world wake up and immediately reach for their phones. They plunge their still dreaming nervous systems directly into the anxiety stream of social media, news, notifications, demands. They are flooding their system with external stimulation before they have even completed the transition from sleep. And then they wonder why they feel scattered, unfocused, reactive throughout the day, why their decision-making is clouded, why they feel like they are always behind, always catching up, never quite in command of their lives. The ancient Jewish sages had a word for what those people are missing. They were missing the threshold, the deliberate crossing, the moment of intentional transition that sets the entire day on a completely different energetic foundation. Netilat Yadayim upon waking is that threshold. It is the act of saying, I am now present. I am now purposeful. My hands are clean. My intention is clear. I am stepping into this day as a conscious co-creator of my reality, not as a passive reactor to whatever comes. And according to the Kabbalists, that distinction between waking consciously versus waking reactively is one of the primary dividing lines between the life of abundance and the life of scarcity. Not because the universe rewards conscious awakeners with magical gifts, but because the person who begins every day with deliberate sacred intention is operating from a fundamentally different internal state, a state of clarity, of agency, of spiritual readiness, and that state produces measurably different choices, responses, and outcomes across the course of a lifetime. Now let's go deeper, because this is where it gets truly extraordinary. The Kabbalah teaches that the human hand is a map, not a metaphorical map, a literal, precise, encoded map of the soul's relationship with divine creative energy. Each of the 5 fingers corresponds to one of the 10 sephirot, the divine emanations through which, according to Kabbalistic cosmology, the infinite light of God flows into the finite world of human experience. The thumb corresponds to Keter and Chochma, the crown, the place of pure, undivided consciousness, the first flash of wisdom before it takes form. The index finger corresponds to Bina, understanding, the womb of the mind, the place where raw insight is developed into coherent knowledge. The middle finger corresponds to Tiferet, beauty, harmony, the balancing point between all opposing forces, the heart of the divine structure. The ring finger corresponds to Netzach and Hod, victory and splendor, the energies of persistence and gratitude, the twin engines of sustainable success. And the little finger corresponds to Yesod and Malchut, foundation and kingdom, the grounding point where spiritual intention meets physical manifestation. When you wash your hands with full awareness of this map, when you understand that you are not just running water over skin, but ritually activating an entire architecture of divine creative energy, the practice becomes something entirely different. It becomes a morning alignment, a system reboot, a daily recalibration of the precise spiritual tools with which you will build your life. And the specific way you pour the water, which hand first, how many times, with what intention, is not arbitrary. It is a precise technology for engaging each of these energetic centers in their proper sequence and balance. Let me spend some time on each of these dimensions, because I want you to truly feel the depth of what we are talking about. I want you to move from intellectual understanding to something more embodied, because the goal here is not just to know this, it is to do this. It is to feel the difference in your own hands, in your own morning, in your own life, starting tomorrow. The right hand is washed first in traditional Jewish practice. This is deeply significant. The right hand, as I mentioned, is associated with chesed, loving kindness, generosity, the outward flow of blessing. By washing the right hand first, you are establishing the energy of giving as the dominant orientation of your day. You are beginning with openness, with generosity, with the posture of one who has something to offer the world. And this is profoundly relevant to wealth, because the deepest secret of Jewish prosperity wisdom, a secret embedded in the practice of tzedakah, the principle of tithing, the entire structure of Jewish communal life, is that wealth flows toward those who are positioned as givers, not takers. The person who wakes up and immediately thinks, "What can I get today?" is operating in a completely different energetic register than the person who wakes up and thinks, "What can I contribute today?" And the ritual of washing the right hand first, the hand of giving, is a daily physical encoding of that orientation. You are literally beginning each day by consecrating your capacity to give. Then comes the left hand, the hand of gevura, of strength and discipline. After establishing the energy of generosity, you balance it with the energy of focused power. Because giving without discernment is not sustainable. Generosity without boundaries leads to depletion, not abundance. The left hand reminds you that your resources, your time, your energy, your money, your creativity, are sacred, and they must be protected as well as shared. This balance between chesed and gevura, between expansion and restraint, between giving and protecting, is the fundamental energetic architecture of healthy wealth. Too much chesed without gevura, and you give everything away and have nothing left. Too much gevura without chesed, and you hold so tightly to what you have that nothing new can flow in. The ritual washing of both hands, in sequence, is a daily physical practice of calibrating this balance. Every single morning, before you have even had your first cup of coffee. I want to pause here for just a moment, because we are going deep into territory that most people never encounter. And if you are finding this as fascinating as I believe you are, I genuinely want to make sure you have access to the full scope of this wisdom. Because what we are exploring today is just one thread in an incredibly rich tapestry of Jewish wealth consciousness. There is so much more. The specific Hebrew words and phrases that the tradition says carry financial blessing when spoken with intention. The way the structure of Shabbat functions as a weekly prosperity ritual. The psychological architecture of Maser. The practice of tithing, and why the wealthiest Jewish families have practiced it for generations, not as a religious obligation, but as a wealth-building strategy. The specific Kabbalistic principles behind Jewish attitudes toward debt, investment, education, and community. All of this and more is what I have compiled in the ebook 15 Jewish Wealth Codes, Enrichment Strategies of the Jewish People. If you have not checked the link in the first pinned comment yet, now is a perfect moment to do so before we continue. Because everything we discuss in the rest of this video will make even more sense within that larger framework. The link is right there waiting for you. Now let's continue, because we have only touched the surface of what I need to share with you today. We have established why the hands matter, what the washing ritual is activating, and how the right and left hands correspond to the twin engines of sustainable prosperity. But now I want to take you into the actual mechanics of the ritual, the specific physical actions, performed in a specific way, for specific reasons. Because this is where the difference between doing it right and doing it wrong becomes critically important. The traditional vessel used for Netilat Yadayim is called a natla or keli, a cup or vessel. And the use of a specific vessel rather than simply holding your hands under running tap water is not a matter of mere custom. It is theologically and energetically precise. The vessel represents intentionality. It represents the act of choosing, of deliberately gathering the water before pouring it, rather than passively receiving it from a flow you did not initiate. There is something profound in this. In the modern world, we have become extraordinarily passive receivers of everything. Entertainment streams to us. Information flows to us. Even our food and our goods are delivered directly to our doors, and while there is nothing inherently wrong with any of this, it cultivates a posture of receiving that, when it becomes the dominant orientation of a person's entire life, creates a fundamental misalignment with the energy of creative, generative abundance. The use of a vessel in the hand-washing ritual is a daily counter-practice to this passivity. You are taking the water. You are gathering it. You are making a conscious choice about what you are going to pour over your consecrated hands. And that act of intentional gathering, however small, is a daily training of the prosperity muscle. The Talmud specifies that the water must be poured from a vessel held in the hand. Specifically, it must be pouring, not running. This distinction matters because pouring requires the active involvement of the giver, whether you are pouring onto your own hands or another person is performing the ritual for you. The water does not just happen, it is delivered with intention. And the direction of the water, downward from a vessel held above, echoes the Kabbalistic model of divine blessing flowing from higher states of reality into lower, denser, more physical states. When you pour water over your hands from a held vessel, you are enacting that cosmic model in miniature. You are saying, I am open to receive the flow of blessing from above. I am positioned beneath the source. I am not trying to grab it or manufacture it or force it. I am holding my hands in the right place with the right intention and allowing it to pour. Can you feel how different that is from the typical morning routine? Most people start their day trying to force things, trying to manufacture outcomes, trying to grab what they need from a resistant world. The hand-washing ritual, done correctly, encodes an entirely different relationship with abundance. It encodes receptivity, openness, trust that the flow exists and that your job is not to create it, but to position yourself beneath it correctly. Now, I want to talk about the number of pourings, because this is where the tradition becomes extraordinarily precise and where the spiritual logic becomes almost mathematically elegant. The standard practice, as codified in the Shulchan Aruch and discussed extensively in Kabbalistic commentary, involves pouring water over each hand a minimum of 2 times, though 3 times is considered the more complete practice in many traditions. Right hand, then left, alternating, with full presence and intention. Each pouring is not redundant. Each layer of water is, in the Kabbalistic understanding, clearing a different level of spiritual impurity, awakening a different dimension of the hand's sacred function. The first pouring removes the gross impurity, the surface-level disconnection from sacred awareness that accumulates simply by existing in the physical world. This is the most basic reset. The second pouring goes deeper. It activates the innate spiritual capacity of the hands, begins the process of alignment we discussed earlier. And in the traditions that practice a third pouring, that final layer is understood as a consecration, a dedication of the hands and their work to a purpose beyond the merely personal. It is the moment of saying, "These hands are not just mine. They are instruments of something larger. And everything I build with them today, I build in partnership with that larger purpose." Think about the wealth implications of that third pouring. Think about the difference in energy between a person who builds wealth purely for personal accumulation, wealth as a means of security, of status, of insulating themselves from the fear of scarcity, and a person who builds wealth as a steward of something larger, as a participant in a sacred creative project, as someone whose prosperity serves not just themselves but their family, their community, their tradition, their world. The Jewish wisdom tradition is almost unanimous in its understanding that the latter orientation is not just more spiritually elevated, it is more practically generative of sustainable, lasting abundance, because it removes the fear-based constrictions that, in the end, always limit how much wealth a fear-driven person can actually hold. Let me tell you about another dimension of this practice that most people never encounter: the dimension of blessing. Because in the full traditional practice of Netilat Yadayim, the washing is accompanied by a bracha, a blessing, a declaration of gratitude and intentionality spoken in Hebrew. The blessing reads, "Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kideshanu bemitzvotav vetzivanu al Netilat Yadayim." Blessed are you, eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us concerning the washing of hands. Now, if you are not Jewish, or if you are Jewish but do not practice in a traditional way, you might be tempted to skip over this and say, "The blessing is not relevant to me." And I want to gently push back on that, because I think you would be missing something extraordinary if you did. The blessing is not primarily a religious statement. It is a neurological and spiritual technology. When you speak words of gratitude and intentionality before performing an act, when you verbally declare the purpose and the sacred context of what you are about to do, you are activating a completely different mode of processing in your brain. You are moving from autopilot to full presence. You are, in the language of modern psychology, shifting from a default mode network response to an executive function, present moment, intentional state. And in that state, every action you take carries more weight, more focus, more creative power. The Jewish tradition understood thousands of years ago what cognitive science has only recently begun to measure: that spoken intention, delivered with full presence before a deliberate act, changes the quality of the act itself. Breshot, blessings, are woven into every significant moment of Jewish life for precisely this reason. They are not passive prayers of thanks sent vaguely upward. They are active declarations that bring the speaker into full conscious alignment with the divine creative force operating through them in this specific moment. When you say a blessing before washing your hands, You are not asking God to bless the water. You are activating yourself as the instrument of blessing. You are remembering in the literal act of speaking the words that you are not just a body going through morning motions. You are a soul in the act of intentional, sacred creation. And this is directly connected to prosperity in the most precise and practical way. Because the Kabbalists teach that bracha, blessing, is not just a word. It is a state of being. The Hebrew root of bracha is connected to the word brisha, which means a pool or a spring. A blessing is a source, a place where abundance gathers and from which abundance flows. When you perform an act with the consciousness of bracha, you are making yourself into a source. And sources attract more. This is the deep, mystical logic of why the tradition is so insistent about blessing, not because God needs to hear the words, but because you need to say them. Because in saying them, you become what they describe. I want to share with you now something that I find perhaps the most practically powerful aspect of the entire hand-washing tradition. Something that connects the ancient ritual to the modern science of habit formation and decision architecture, in a way that I think will make you want to begin practicing it immediately. The Talmud and later Kabbalistic authorities are very specific that Netilat Yadayim should be performed before eating, before prayer, upon waking, and at various other transitional moments throughout the day. And they are equally specific that once the hands are washed and blessed, they should not be engaged with distracting or diminishing activities before the sacred act that follows. If you have washed your hands before prayer, you do not stop to check your phone. If you have washed your hands before a meal, you do not wander off to have an unrelated conversation. The washing creates a sacred frame, a container of intentionality, and that container must be honored. What this means in practice is that the hand-washing ritual is a technology for sacred sequencing. It is a method for creating deliberate transitions between states of consciousness, between types of activity, between the mundane and the holy. And here is the wealth insight. The people who build extraordinary things are almost always masters of sacred sequencing. They have rituals that mark the beginning of deep work. They have practices that transition them from distracted to focused, from scattered to aligned, from reactive to proactive. And they maintain those containers. They do not allow the boundary between focused creative work time and distracted time to blur. The hand-washing ritual, practiced seriously, is a 2,000-year-old daily training in exactly this capacity. Let me give you a modern example that I think will crystallize this beautifully. There have been a number of documented studies, and the work of psychologist Roy Baumeister on ego depletion and willpower is particularly relevant here, demonstrating that the quality of human decision-making degrades across the course of a day as cognitive resources are depleted. We make our best decisions when we are freshest, most focused, most internally coherent. And practices that reset that coherence, that restore focused attention and clear intention, have measurable impacts on performance and outcomes. The hand-washing ritual, practiced with full presence and sacred intention, functions as exactly this kind of reset. It is a coherence restoration technology. Every time you do it, you are, in a very real neurological and energetic sense, restoring your capacity for clear, creative, abundant-minded action. Now let me take you even deeper into the mystical dimension of this, because I promised you Kabbalah, and I want to deliver fully. The Zohar, the central text of Jewish mysticism, attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and compiled in medieval Spain, though drawing on traditions far more ancient, devotes significant attention to the spiritual status of the hands and the ritual of their washing. And one of the most striking teachings in the Zohar on this subject is the concept that the hands, when properly consecrated through ritual washing, become what the text calls Yad Hashem, literally, the hand of God, not in a hubristic sense, not in the sense of claiming divine status, but in the sense that when a human being operates in full sacred alignment, with purified intention and consecrated creative energy, their actions become channels for divine creative force to enter the world. The Zohar teaches that every act of genuine human creativity, every business built with integrity, every relationship nurtured with love, every problem solved with wisdom, every contribution made to the world with generosity, is an act of divine creation flowing through human hands. And the ritual of Netilat Yadayim is the daily practice of remembering and renewing that sacred channel. It is the practice of saying, I am not just a body doing tasks. I am a soul doing sacred work, and my hands, properly prepared and properly oriented, are the instruments through which that sacred work enters the physical world. I find this teaching almost unbearably beautiful, and I find it practically profound in a way that goes far beyond what most people understand when they think about prosperity and wealth. Because the deepest blockage to abundance is not a lack of opportunity or a lack of ability. It is a disconnection from the sacred creative energy that makes genuine prosperity possible. It is the experience of working and striving and grinding from a place of disconnection, from yourself, from your deepest purpose, from the sense that your work matters in a way that transcends mere personal gain. And what the hand-washing ritual offers, practiced with full consciousness, is a daily, simple, accessible reconnection to that sacred creative source. Now let me talk about water itself for a moment. Because the choice of water as the medium for this ritual is not arbitrary. In Jewish mystical thought, water is one of the most symbolically rich and spiritually significant of all substances. The Hebrew word for water, mayim, is spelled with two mems enclosing a yod, the letter that represents the divine spark, the point of pure spiritual energy. Water, in Kabbalistic symbolism, represents chesed, loving kindness, the downward flow of divine abundance, the generous, unbounded, life-giving quality of divine energy as it moves from higher states of reality into the physical world. Rain is understood as blessing descending from above. The splitting of the Red Sea was not just a physical miracle. It was a cosmic statement about the parting of the waters of Hesed, the opening of the channel of divine abundance, at the most desperate moment of the Jewish people's history. When you pour water over your hands in the morning ritual, you are engaging with this entire symbolic universe. You are inviting the energy of chesed, of flowing, generous, life-giving abundance, to flow over the instruments of your creative work. You are enacting in physical miniature the same cosmic event that the tradition sees at the heart of every miraculous outpouring of blessing. And in the Kabbalistic understanding, physical actions performed with spiritual awareness genuinely activate the energies they symbolize. The universe is not indifferent to intention. It responds to resonance. When your physical action and your spiritual awareness are aligned, when what you do with your body matches what you believe in your soul, you create a resonance that the tradition says literally attracts divine blessing. This is the heart of the Kabbalistic understanding of ritual, not superstition, not magical thinking, but a sophisticated understanding of the relationship between consciousness, intention, physical action, and the flow of divine creative energy through the world. And the hand-washing ritual is one of the most elegant, most accessible, most practically powerful expressions of this understanding in the entire tradition. Let me now share with you something that I think will connect everything we have discussed so far into a single coherent picture, something that the great Kabbalistic master Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, known as the Ramchal, wrote in his masterwork Netilat Yadayim, The Path of the Just. The Ramchal teaches that the primary obstacle to human flourishing, spiritual and material alike, is not external difficulty. It is not the hardness of the world, the unfairness of circumstances, or the scarcity of opportunity. The primary obstacle is what he calls shlimut, the tendency of the human soul toward indolence, toward going through the motions of life without full presence, without the sustained effort of consciousness required to live intentionally. And the antidote to shlimut, according to the Ramchal, is not more effort in the ordinary sense. It is the cultivation of zehirut, watchfulness, attentiveness, the quality of being fully awake to what one is doing and why. The daily practice of Netilat Yadayim, performed with full consciousness and sacred intention, is one of the most powerful daily practices of zehirut imaginable. It is a moment at the very beginning of each day when you choose to be fully awake, when you choose to be present, when you refuse to let the day begin on autopilot. And that choice, made daily, compounded across a lifetime, is, in the Kabbalistic understanding and in the understanding of every modern psychology of high performance, one of the primary differentiators between the life of abundance and the life of quiet desperation. Now we have been together for a significant portion of this journey, and I want to acknowledge the depth of what we have covered. We have moved through the physical, psychological, neurological, symbolic, and metaphysical dimensions of a ritual that most people think is just about hygiene. We have seen how the structure of the practice, the specific vessel, the alternating hands, the multiple pourings, the accompanying blessing, the intentional sequencing, is a complete technology for daily alignment with the forces of creative abundance. And we have seen how this technology is grounded not in superstition, but in a deeply sophisticated understanding of human consciousness, divine creative energy, and the practical requirements of sustainable prosperity. But now we have arrived at the part of this conversation that I have been building toward since the very first words. Now I need to tell you the thing that most people are doing wrong. The thing that, according to the Kabbalistic tradition, is not merely insufficient, it is actively, specifically, energetically harmful. The thing that, if you are doing it, you are not just missing the blessing. You are, in the precise language of the mystical tradition, washing your wealth away. Before I reveal it, I want you to do something. I want you to scroll for just a moment to the pinned comment below this video and look at the link to the ebook 15 Jewish Wealth Codes, Enrichment Strategies of the Jewish People. Because what I am about to tell you is directly connected to one of the core principles in that guide. A principle that appears in different forms across dozens of different Jewish wealth practices. Once you hear what I am about to say, you will understand exactly why that principle is so foundational. And if you want the full map of how it operates across all 15 wealth codes, including specific practices, historical case studies, and step-by-step guidance, that ebook is where you will find it. The link is pinned right now. Take a look, and then come back for the reveal, because this is the moment everything changes. Here it is, the thing that the ancient rabbis warned against. The thing that the Kabbalists identified as one of the most common, most damaging, and most easily corrected spiritual errors in the daily life of a person who genuinely wants to live in alignment with abundance. It is this: washing your hands with your mind somewhere else entirely. I know. You were expecting something more dramatic. You were expecting a forbidden object, a specific technique to avoid, a color of soap or a direction to face. And I want you to sit with your reaction for a moment, because the reaction itself is revealing. The tendency to think that the spiritual blockage must be somewhere outside us, in an object, in an arrangement, in a color, in a thing we can point to and remove, is itself one of the primary manifestations of the poverty consciousness that the tradition is trying to help us transcend. The most dangerous thing you can do at the sink every morning is not to wash incorrectly in a technical sense. The most dangerous thing, and the Kabbalists are absolutely unambiguous about this, is to wash on autopilot, to go through the physical motions while your mind is already racing through the anxiety of the coming day, or still fogged with the remnants of last night's dreams, or scrolling through the mental inbox of your worries and regrets. Because when you do that, you are not performing Netilat Yadayim. You are just getting your hands wet, and there is nothing in your hands. No activation of chesed, no consecration of the creative instruments, no alignment of the soul's energetic architecture that will carry forward into the day that follows. The Talmud is deeply concerned with the concept of Kavanah, intention, directed consciousness, the presence of the heart and mind in the performance of sacred acts, and the tradition teaches with striking unanimity that a sacred act performed without Kavanah is, at minimum, diminished in its power and effect. Some authorities go further and say that certain acts performed in a complete absence of Kavanah, performed as pure mechanical habit with the mind entirely elsewhere, do not fulfill their sacred purpose at all. They are shells without souls, gestures without meaning, motions without energy. And here is why this is so devastating in its wealth implications. If you have been going to the sink every morning, or before every meal, or at every other ritual moment, and washing your hands while your mind races ahead to your schedule, your problems, your obligations, your fears, your plans, you have been performing an empty ritual, not just a neutral one. According to the Kabbalistic understanding of spiritual energy and its relationship to consciousness, performing a sacred ritual in a state of complete distraction does not merely fail to attract blessing. It creates a kind of spiritual static, a dissonance between the physical action and the spiritual reality it is meant to evoke, that actually muddies the energetic environment of your day. You are doing the motion. You are not doing the practice. And the compounding effect of this over years and decades of distracted morning rituals is what the Zohar describes as a kind of spiritual desensitization, a progressive dulling of the soul's awareness of its own sacred nature, its own creative power, its own connection to the flow of divine abundance. Each distracted washing reinforces the unconscious belief: I am just a body, going through physical motions, doing tasks, getting through the day. And that belief, held daily at the most foundational moment of transition from sleep to wakefulness, shapes everything that follows. This is the villain, not a forbidden object, not a dangerous color, not an inauspicious direction. The villain is absentness. The villain is the autopilot that runs us through our days, including our sacred days, without our ever truly showing up for them. And the reason I built to this slowly, the reason I gave you all the depth and richness of the practice first, is so that when you hear the problem, you feel the full weight of what is being lost, not as an abstract teaching, as a real, daily compounding loss of sacred creative power. But here is what I need you to hear now, immediately with the same force. The solution is not complicated. It is not expensive. It does not require years of study or rabbinic consultation, although both of those are wonderful things. The solution is available to you tomorrow morning. It is available to you the next time you go to a sink. The solution is presence. Full, deliberate, unhurried, grateful presence at the sink. Here is what that looks like in practice. You slow down. You gather the water deliberately. You hold the vessel. Or if you are using a faucet, you cup your hands and receive the water with intention. You begin with the right hand, pour the water over it, and as the water flows, you say, quietly or in your mind, "My hands are instruments of giving. My hands are consecrated to creative work. My hands are aligned with the flow of divine blessing." Then the left hand, "My hands are strong. My hands are disciplined. My hands are protected and purposeful." If you know the Hebrew blessing, say it. If you do not, make your own blessing in the language that lives in your heart. The specific words matter less than the quality of attention you bring to them. Then you stand for a moment, just a moment, before you pick up your phone, before you check your email, before you engage with any of the urgencies of the modern world. You stand and you feel the water on your hands. You feel the transition. You feel the shift from the unconscious, receptive state of sleep to the conscious, consecrated, purposeful state of creative engagement. You let that feeling settle into your body, and then you step into your day as a person who has just aligned themselves with the deepest available source of abundance and creative power. That is the complete practice. And I want you to notice, nothing in what I just described requires a special object or a specific arrangement. Everything in what I just described requires the one thing that is always available to you, and that is always, in the end, the decisive factor in whether any spiritual practice transforms your life: your own conscious attention, your own willingness to show up, fully and intentionally, for the sacred moments of your own existence. The Kabbalists would say, and I believe they are right, that this single shift, practiced consistently, will change things. Not because the universe rewards people who wash their hands a certain way with magical gifts of money, but because the person who begins every single day by consciously, gratefully, intentionally consecrating themselves to purposeful, creative engagement is a fundamentally different operator in the world than the person who sleepwalks through their mornings. They see differently. They decide differently. They relate differently to opportunity and to risk and to other people. And across the course of a day, a week, a year, a lifetime, those differences accumulate into completely different lives. This is the technology. This is the ancient wisdom. This is what was encoded in the ritual of Netilat Yadayim, by the same tradition that produced some of history's most extraordinarily successful, creative, intellectually brilliant, and materially prosperous communities, in defiance of every external obstacle that history could possibly throw at them. The tradition that kept families and communities intact and oriented toward flourishing through millennia of hardship. The tradition that understood, with extraordinary precision, that the daily practices of the inner life are the ultimate foundation of every external outcome. I want to close our time together today with something that I think will stay with you. There is a phrase in the Jewish tradition, Aseh lecha rav, make for yourself a teacher. The implication is that wisdom does not come fully formed from a single source. It is cultivated, sought, practiced, and deepened over a lifetime through relationship with tradition, with community, with authentic teachers, and with the unfolding experience of a consciously lived life. What I have shared with you today is a doorway. It is an opening into a world of wisdom that has been enriching and protecting and orienting human lives toward abundance for thousands of years. If you have felt something resonate today, if something in this conversation has touched a part of you that has been waiting to remember something important, I want to invite you one last time to take that feeling seriously and take one more step. The ebook 15 Jewish Wealth Codes, Enrichment Strategies of the Jewish People is the next step in that journey. It is comprehensive, it is practical, it is rooted in authentic Jewish wisdom tradition, and it will give you a complete map of the 15 core principles that have made Jewish financial wisdom one of the most studied and admired bodies of knowledge in the entire world. The link is in the first pinned comment. It is there for you right now. And before you go, let me ask you to do one thing in the comments. Type the words, "My hands are instruments of abundance." Just that. As a declaration. As an act of Kavanah, of conscious intention, marking this moment as a transition point. Because that is what this conversation has been, a ritual transition. From washing your hands like everyone else in distracted automatic motion, to washing them the way the ancient Jewish masters intended, with presence, with purpose, and with the profound, beautiful understanding that every drop of water that flows over your consecrated hands is, in the Kabbalistic tradition, a drop of divine blessing entering your life. Tomorrow morning, when you go to the sink, and every morning after that, remember this. Your hands are not just your hands. They are the instruments through which everything you will ever build, create, give, and receive will pass. Take care of them. Consecrate them. Greet each day by activating them with full, sacred, grateful presence. And watch, as thousands of Jewish families across thousands of years have watched, as the quality of what flows through them begins, quietly and unmistakably, to change. If this has moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video to help more people find this wisdom. Subscribe so you never miss what is coming next, because in our next conversation, we are going to go deep into another one of the most misunderstood practices in all of Jewish prosperity tradition, one that most people think is purely about time, but that the Kabbalists understood as the single most powerful weekly wealth activation available to any human being. You will not want to miss it. Until then, go wash your hands, and this time really show up for it.